And we are live. Welcome to the Drink and Fix Show, episode 11. And we have really cool guests and panels. And I want to introduce Don Komarechka. Hopefully I said it correct.
Very close, but thank you.
Uh, and Don, you are in Canada, north of Toronto, right?
Yeah, a little city called Barrie, Ontario. It's quite nice.
All right, cool. And then we have two of our panelists. Lotus, you want to introduce the panelists?
Yes. We are welcoming tonight Maki Silverberg. Hey, Maki.
Hello.
Tell people where they can find you on the web.
Makisphotography.com, so MAKIS photography.com. I'm on Google+, Instagram, Facebook. That's about it.
Everywhere.
Is that a smug
Almost
mug?
everywhere. It is a smug mug.
Woohoo! We like
Yep.
smug.
I do too.
And you're in Austin area shooting.
Yes.
Well, sweet. We're glad you're on with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
We also have Ryan McLean.
Hi guys,
Hey. Let's hear about you.
I'm from Vancouver, BC. I guess you can find me online at www.ryanmclean.com. And yeah, the typical grab bag of social media profiles are up there as well, generally under my own name.
We're all on all of those ones, right?
Pretty much.
Most of us. Even our grandmas and grandpas are nowadays, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right?
How about you, Lotus? Where can we find you?
Everywhere. Including outside your window at night, very creepy looking in while you're sleeping.
That is
I'm at lotuscarol.com.
true.
And on all the regular social networks that we're all on with Grandpa and Grandma.
And you just opened one of the Facebook pages, right?
Yeah, I actually just created a page for my website because I'm way behind what everybody else has done forever ago. So I'm trying that out.
So which one is that one on Facebook?
My page on Facebook, it's lotuscarol.com.
Oh, okay, cool, excellent. Like I don't know.
Thanks for the plug time.
I know.
Well, let's talk to Don.
Hello.
So Don, let me ask you because when I started photography, was 7 years ago. My son was born. I say I'm gonna get a decent camera to take pictures of him, and I started doing still photography, still life photography, and I just got different objects and just some decent lighting and took pictures of it. Do you started with something like that? What got you to get into what you do, and what was your first camera that you attempted to try and why you did?
Well, that's a great question, Juan, and it's actually right about the same time that you started experimenting. My dad was always interested in photography when he was quite young, and he never had the opportunity to pursue photography as a career, although he had wanted to. And I, at that point, through my childhood and adolescence, I really didn't have a desire to be interested in photography. But my dad was getting quite ill at the time, and unfortunately he's since passed away. But at that time, he gave me something of a living will. And he said, take this envelope, go spend it on something that I want you to enjoy, and I want to see you enjoy it while I still can. And without thinking too much about it, I had gone out and I bought a camera because I knew it was a way to, reconnect. I had been rather distant, and I wanted to sort of bond with my dad. And so he taught me pretty much everything that he knew while he still could, and sparked something in me that later on I was able to start to build my own steam. And it took, I'm going to say, about 2 to 3 years doing it on an amateur level before I just sort of dove right in and started depending on that for my income. And so now photography is what I can call my profession. And I kind of owe it to my dad. He was my inspiration to get started in this. And I've taken it on in the kind of thing that I like to photograph, and I'm sure you'll see it in a minute, is the things that you can't normally see with your own eyes. A lot of my work requires a certain amount of pre-visualization or a bit of imagination, and the end result is something that lets me explore the world. And that for me, that's what photography is all about. And I think that's kind of fun because now it's not just about taking the picture; it's about sharing the entire process.
So what was the first thing that you say? Okay, let me take a picture of this that you can't see with the eye that I want to share with everybody.
So I think that kind of started when I started exploring the world of macro photography, and when I got into that realm, I started to say, okay, well, what are these things that I'm seeing, and sort of trying to find explanations to exactly what that is. And I'll share with you one picture now, if I can.
Yeah.
That sort of. It's a later picture, but it's one of those ones that makes you kind of raise an eyebrow, a little bit of curiosity, and so this is. Well, I'm not going to tell you what this is. I want you guys to maybe try and guess what this happens to be a picture of.
Droplets of oil and water, maybe?
Well,
Coffee.
not quite. Okay, so Ryan gets it. It's coffee.
I like macro photography.
So
It
this
looks
is
like you
actually.
got a pretty fresh brew, though.
Yeah, well, this is Turkish coffee, and so it's got a lot of oils in it, and that creates some beautiful rainbow patterns in the bubbles. The same phenomenon that puts rainbows in soap bubbles, phenomenon called thin film interference, and it's quite beautiful. But here I am sitting in a cafe in Istanbul, and my lovely fiance is so patient with me. We're in a beautiful city and beautiful landscapes, enjoying a wonderful cup of coffee, and I look in the coffee and I'm thinking, okay, I need to take a picture. So you get out all the gear and you take the picture and then you move on. But so I mean that's the kind of stuff that it excites me about photography, to just dive in and say, okay, well, this is unknown to me and it's beautiful, and can I make an image of that and make a journey, a bit of an adventure.
No, that's just amazing that you can just grab a tiny little thing and just take a picture of it, and you've never seen it at that scale, and then you're surprised with what you get.
And a lot of my work requires, I shouldn't say a lot of it, but I come up with an idea, and sometimes that idea takes months, if not years, to properly execute. And one of those ideas is, I think, one of my most popular photographs. In fact, it's one of the ones that launched my career in photography. And if I could say I became a professional photographer on a certain date, it's the date that I, took this particular picture. And so that would be this guy right here, which is kind of recognizable. It's red maple leaves on a bed of snow, and that, of course, resembles the Canadian flag.
Yeah.
And those two things, for those that don't live in this region of the world, don't happen at the same time of the year. So those leaves are preserved and then laid out on snow about 4 months after the fact. And that was a bit of a trick to do, and it took a few months in the process, and I was quite happy with that. Now, it's funny because this image is my most stolen photograph. And I guess everybody sort of loves it and thinks if it's on the internet it's free. But anyhow, I'm glad I'm glad people like it. And then as I progressed as a professional photographer, I came across some really wonderful scenes that I was just so happy to find, and things like this one here, which has a small little plant growing up out of a rail bed. And this morning started with complete failure. I was trying to do a nice sunrise shot, and the location I chose was just terrible. A great location, but just not for sunrise. And so I'm just bummed out. Driving home, I see this rail, this train track, and let's just stop and walk along it for a while. Now, not the smartest thing I've ever done to lie down on an active rail bridge, but it got the shot. And it was funny because this shot actually had quite a build-up to get it. I had no idea what I was looking for and what I was going to find. And so that's something of the journey in photography for me as well. And I remember on the last episode I listened to, I think it was Toby had on, was talking about his adventures hanging out of a helicopter, and so I thought I would put my hat in the ring and show a photograph of Toronto with me kind of hanging out of a helicopter with a fisheye lens.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's awesome.
On a harborfront. So
that's another place I need to go to. We got some good friends up there too, and we got a chapter up there.
It's a wonderful place, and I've met some of the people from the chapter that you've got up there, and they are great people. And so my shout out to them. I mean, Toronto is such a wonderful city to explore on the ground, but it's one of those unique points of view where just outside of the frame, we're actually flying above it right now, is Toronto Island. There's a small series of islands that you can get to and shoot the city right across back over. Very easy to do an entire night photo scene with the Toronto city skyline, and so it's a great city to photograph, whether on the inside or on the outskirts. It's a beautiful place. So this is kind of funny because this is photographed with a fisheye lens, and I like to do quirky stuff like that. This makes it look like a little planet kind of feel, and I kind of like that. But here's another fisheye photograph from a completely different part of the world, from where I broke into an abandoned building in the mountains of Bulgaria.
Wow.
And so that kind of shows a bit of a different perspective on the kind of work that I like to do. This was actually the former Communist Party of Bulgaria headquarters during the era of the Soviet Union. And of course, with the fall of that regime, it's been abandoned and left to the elements and the looters, and it's been in a state of, I'm going to say, beautiful disrepair. And it's kind of a fun thing to walk around and explore these kinds of things that lie forgotten and unseen, but still make some beautiful images with them.
Such a badass photo.
It is amazing. It is amazing. You can do so many different kind of images in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny though. When you look at this, you can see all of the holes in the ceiling. Most of the roof, at least the lower part of it, was stolen because it was made of copper, and there's metal value there. So all the looters took that. All that's left is the steel beams that are holding it together and corrugated sheet metal. And this is on the top of a mountain, so it's really, really windy up there. And when the wind picks up, all that sheet metal rattles, and it sounds like this entire thing is about to collapse. And I don't know if you can quite see it in this frame, but there's some gouges in the cement where these panels have slammed down. And so when you're in this, you don't want to spend a lot of time taking
A little
pictures.
dangerous.
Yeah.
You're
Waiting
kind of
for the
afraid for
hamburger
your life.
drop, so to speak, there.
Exactly. So we spent about 20 minutes inside, and that was about 19 minutes too long. But we got some pretty fun pictures in there, and that was a great little bit of exploration. And
Sorry.
yeah, no. Ask the question.
So if you want to start getting into macro photography, what gear do I need?
Well, I'm going to get to the macro photography in just a second.
Okay.
And there's some really fun stuff talking about macro photography because when you look at something like this here, this doesn't require a lot of gear. I have placed the Earth inside of a water droplet, and it's relatively easy to do. I'm surprised I was one of the very first people to do it. But this idea, I should say that I didn't invent this idea. It's been done before, and I got inspired to say, well, let's make this sort of a natural environment, and let's make the droplet sitting on a pedal, and I call this image Fragile Planet. But this is done with what you would need, maybe just a regular old macro lens, nothing fancy here. And this is actually done with a lot of people, if they're just getting into macro photography, they might not have a macro flash of any kind. So I have a solution for that. This picture was actually taken with a Pringles can as a light modifier. And this was actually part of an article that I was writing on free and cheap things to add to your camera bag. And this one is freshly finished. I just finished the snack not too long ago. But what you would do is you would fit this end over your flash on the top of your camera, and you'd cut the other end off on maybe a 45-degree angle or something, and cover that open ending with wax paper. And then that just becomes a little light funnel, and it'll guide the light to exactly where it needs to be to take the picture of your subject. And with macro photography, the subject needs to be lit well. And oftentimes, if you're not using a flash, you'll find that motion blur becomes a big problem if you're just using ambient light. So most of my work is using flash. And getting the flash in the right place is important. And macro flashes are expensive. I mean, you can get some cheap, $40 LED ring lights. They're probably not going to cut it because they're not going to remove the motion blur for you. You want to, spend at least a couple of $100 on something that is decent to get, and I know I'm getting kind of technical, but motion blur is fixed by having most of the light coming from an instantaneous flash. And all of my shots benefit from that because, at these magnifications, I'm not the steadiest person, but I can get really steady results because it's instant. And I can take a lot of pictures. I can take 100 shots, and I know, the good one's in there somewhere. So good flash is important, but, the solution can be pretty cheap. And so Flash, you need it. Macro lenses, you know, if you've got one, great. If you don't, you can even just put a 50mm lens on backwards and you've got about the same amount of magnification. You can use close-up filters that sit in front of the lens and act like reading glasses, and you can put extension tubes on the back of the lens that shift the entire focusing forward. And I don't mean to make this a tutorial. I mean, these are great things, and if you want to look up and get closer, then extension tubes and close-up filters, look for those. You can find them on eBay for almost nothing. And while they might not allow you to focus properly and control your lens properly, for 25 bucks you can go to town and have some fun experiences with the world of macro photography. But you encounter a lot of challenges when you come into this world. And one of those challenges happens to be depth of field, because you have almost none. And I'll show you one image here where this particular shot, this is, let me just do a screen share again. And so this one is a picture of frost. And these are frost particles that are growing near the mouth of a cave that it's an abandoned gold mine. And the night before we had like minus 30 degrees Celsius weather. And it was so cold that the warm air from inside the cave froze on impact as soon as it exited, and these beautiful frost formations started forming. And if I zoom in on this, you can see some very interesting frost structures coming in. But you notice that the depth of field is incredibly shallow. This little piece of frost here that's kind of in the middle of the frame, that's maybe 1/3 of a millimeter thick. And that's about all I have in focus. In fact, not even the entire thing. So the point at which you focus becomes so critical at this work that you have to be very deliberate, or you just have to photograph it, you know, however many hundreds of times until you know you've got the shot that you need within that sequence. And what I do with that actually is a lot of my work on extreme macro photography involves focus stacking, where I can take multiple shots of something, as in the case with this particular snowflake. And this snowflake measures, you know, from edge to edge only about a millimeter or so in diameter. And at that scale, this is going to be, you know, maybe 25 or 30 separate images that are stacked together as different slices. And I don't know if I'll be able to do this here. Let me see if I can go to all photographs and see if I can find in here the constituent pieces of this particular snowflake. Because I might photograph a snowflake, you know, 100, 200 times or something of that nature. So this is what an image would look like right out of my camera. And if I zoom in on that, you can see that I only have a tiny little bit of that in focus. And so I need to get that little sliver of focus at every point across the way. And that's really the trick of making a good image. It's slightly underexposed right out of the camera, and that's to save on flash power, because if I'm firing, you know, 200 flashes off at this magnification, it's very difficult for a flash to keep up with me. So I usually boost it up a little bit in post-processing. But that's how they come out of the camera. And
so you're basically so what you're saying is that you get focused like in that one area, and you take the shot, and then you move focus ever so slightly, and you do that over and over and over and over and over and over again, and then you stack a large number of those images.
In this case, this was 16 images that I combined. Actually, I can see the number down here. But some of them as many as 70. The average is around 40. And when you say you adjust the focus, Lotus, you adjust it, but not by changing anything on the camera, but by physically moving the camera forward and backward.
Okay.
If I choose another one in this sequence here, you can see now that the focus is falling roughly through the center. And while it looks like I've got more in focus in this frame, it's just because there's more snowflake falling through the focus lines. And so I physically move the camera forward and backward, and only by about a millimeter from edge to edge. So it's fairly fine-tuned work. And the background here that you see all these little fibers and things coming in. That's because the background behind all of my snowflakes is just a black mitten. That's what every one of them is photographed on. And so it's
technical gear.
Oh yeah, you know, I mean, high tech, high expense. You know, required to do that.
So when you say you're moving the camera, is this something you're adjusting just by feel with your own hands, or is there equipment you have that will help you move your camera a millimeter at a time?
Well, so there is equipment for that purpose. However, that equipment does me no good in this particular case. These images are done handheld. And the reason why is well, it's threefold, really. Because I need to choose a very specific point of view of the snowflake. And I'm going to pull up another image here that sort of showcases that. if I show you this this snowflake, this particular image is photographed with the camera at a fairly specific angle. You know, I found one that I liked that showcased the snowflake quite well. But if I change that angle by about 4 or 5 degrees, then I get the surface to reflect differently. And it's a very small change of the angle of the camera, but I can make the snowflake surface shine, or I can make the edge become quite visible and beautiful in that respect.
Wow.
And so that's a creative choice I have to make. But the problem is, I have to rotate the camera based on the subject being the anchor point of a tripod. And no tripod is configured to do that. So I have to rotate the entire camera freehand to find that precise angle that I need. And if I was dealing with a tripod to find the difference between these 2 points, it would take me way too long. The snowflake would either melt or blow away or get smothered by other falling snow, because this is all done in an active snowfall. And so it's all done freehand. All of this focus stacking was done out of necessity by hand, handheld, and because I've learned the skills and how to do that, that reflects a lot of my macro work is done freehand as well.
So what are you shooting that snowflake with?
So that snowflake is photographed with a fairly specialized lens, a Canon 65 millimeter. They have it's a 1x to 5x magnification macro lens, and it allows me to get extremely close to subjects. You know, for example, this particular snowflake here is about 0.8 millimeters in diameter. And I can, you know, with that gear, I can get very close in on this, and then I can use extension tubes and other accoutrements to get even closer still. And you might notice that the colors in this are quite unusual, and you might not have expected to find color in a snowflake. But the fun stuff here is that that's the same phenomenon that put those rainbows in that bubble of coffee. And then in soap bubbles, it's thin film interference at work. And you'll find not often, but a lot of snowflakes will have these vibrant, colorful patterns. Sometimes, you know, this is quite a rare color that I've found that has red, because it doesn't show up in the interference patterns that often. And here's another small snowflake that shows you kind of the principles at work. Now, if I were to zoom in on this one section of the snowflake, you'll see that these colors radiating along this edge, they're changing based on the thickness of a bubble that's trapped in the ice. So this gets kind of sciencey, and I get really excited when I get to dissect what's happening and how a snowflake forms and exactly why these colors are coming about. That just gets me really excited about photography. And so different thicknesses in the ice create different colors in these bubbles. And so you can see there's you know, blues and purples and yellows and greens, all because the bubbles are different thicknesses within that particular snowflake, and that's kind of fun.
So do you actually see, like when you hold your camera to your eye, you actually see these colors?
That's the fun part, is I usually don't. It's because the snowflake is so small and not really well illuminated until my flash goes off. When my flash goes off, I will see the surface of the snowflake glow. And so in this case here, I will not know that there's rainbows forming in the branches of this particular crystal.
Wow.
Or in the center part here, you see this line that has colors and some other little rainbow patterns inside. Those are completely invisible to me. And in fact, when I'm photographing this, there's so little ambient light, the only way that I can see the subject is when the flash fires. So I'm focusing by strobe. And so it's funny because when my flash you know, starts to run low or my camera buffer fills, I have to go into complete Zen mode and like stop breathing, and because I have to keep the camera completely still on the subject while I can't see the subject, while I wait for the buffer to empty out, and then I can keep shooting, and hopefully I'm still on track to do another.
So you're like a snowflake sniper kind of thing.
A snowflake, yeah, snowflake sniper. I like the sound of that. And
this isn't like a drink and click activity, in other words.
Well,
Really?
it's funny because this is.
We're not gonna have a steady hand.
Well, you know, from my back door, so I can, you know, jump back inside, and there is a warm brown liqueur waiting for me. Right. As soon as I'm done, as soon as I give up.
That's when you start seeing the colors.
That's when the colors come out. Yeah, exactly. So this is one of my favorites that I have found, and I kind of like it because of the symmetry and the large center, and it's very well balanced, and it's got some thickness and some small little details, and so that's a favorite. And on par with that as a favorite would be this guy right here. because
Wow.
again of that, but it has the added benefit of that that internal detail, that interference pattern that's giving me magentas and greens in a very bizarre pattern that I haven't really seen much before, and so I'm very excited when this kind of stuff comes up, so that makes winters here in Canada a little bit more tolerable, but I mean that only covers about a third of the year for me as far as photography goes, and I I've got hundreds of these that I haven't edited yet. The wait list on my Snowflake catalog is quite extensive. And I'll get to them, or at least most of them. Some of them might never see the light of day, but I'll get to the best of them. I'm going to guess between 100 and 150 snowflake photographs every year.
Wow. So do you print this, and do you have like a gallery that sell them for you, or?
What a wonderful segue, Juan. I have this wonderful book that I have published in December, and so this is a 300-page hardcover book on snowflakes, and it covers all the fun science, and about a third of the book is actually dedicated to the photographic techniques that I use from beginning to end, from all the camera gear and all the techniques all the way through the editing process, which takes about, for me, 4 hours worth of editing on each image. So it's not a quick snap and throw onto the internet kind of project. But so that I published in December, and if anybody's curious, you can find that at skycrystals.ca. And the project was crowdfunded. I was thrilled with how much support I had for that, and it's been a huge success. A lot of turmoil along the way, but it ended quite well, and I'm happy with that.
That's awesome that you can get the crowdfunded to do a project like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if I may, can I ask how it is that you prepare your images for print than you would for web? Because I think I saw a picture of your books that were quite big, right? You said 4 hours, right? Does it take 4 hours for the book, or is that for a normal web shot?
For all of them, every single one that I do will take
you always
about 4
edit at
hours.
the same large quantity, and then just quality. Sorry, and then you just publish
Exactly.
the web, I guess. Okay.
Well, there's a few problems with it's necessary evils because I have to do these handheld, and my positioning will change slightly horizontally, vertically, from shot to shot. Photoshop can correct for that very easily, but that also changes my perspective on the subject ever so slightly. So when I combine them together, a straight line might be slightly askew when I zoom into 100%. So what I have to do is I have to go back in through and correct for all of those problems and make an image that is, geometrically perfect, and remove the background and enhance the details, because at this scale, I'm dealing with some technical challenges like diffraction limiting, which we need to be drinking more to get into that. But I go all out when it comes to some of these photographs, and when it comes time to print one, for a book or for I just had an order come in the other day for two 30 by 30 canvas prints of snowflakes.
Oh wow!
I'm very happy to put those together, and and so I make them prepared for that right from the get-go. And when I upload them on Google+, for the wintertime, I usually do what I call my Snowflake a Day project, where I put up one snowflake image every single day for the length of the winter, which for here, unfortunately, lasts about 100 days. And I upload the full resolution files, as big as people can enjoy, and so they can go in and
that's really
check
cool.
out the details.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no point of uploading something if you can't really see the details.
Well, that's
Especially for something like
exactly.
Yeah.
The details are what really make these images magical. If it's just viewed in a stream or whatever, they're great, but as soon as you zoom in and check out all the intricate, small, finite details that are fractions of millimeters in size, I think that's where the fun starts. But
so do you just watch the forecast and say, okay, there's a snowfall coming tonight, let me get my stuff ready?
It's like every day, right?
Oh, this past winter for sure. I'll set my alarm for 3:30 in the morning or whenever it happens to be that a good snowfall is coming, and I'll get out there and check it out. Half the time I'm wrong. Being an amateur meteorologist, you don't have all the facts, and the biggest snowflakes might form at minus 15 degrees Celsius, but that's in the clouds, right? That's not on the ground. And so what's the temperature difference between the two? And so there's so many different factors that if there's snow coming, I make sure I go and check it, and I don't miss a single snowstorm. And because of that, this year I had a lot of colorful storms that I came across. Last year I only had one. This year I had about 4 or 5, where the conditions were just right to bring those colorful details in the crystals. And so I spared no expense. I made sure that I was out there as much as I could be.
So Don, I have to ask, just because I'm a bit of a geek, and macro photography is very, very technical, but just taking a good technical photo doesn't necessarily make it beautiful. And you need to have a lot of, artistic sort of tendencies, yeah, you have to have that mind. Where did that come in? Because your images, they have great color, they have great composition, and they almost emote, and they're a very static subject, and that's hard to do. So where does that come into play, and where did it come from for you?
Well, that's a tricky question, Ryan, because I mean, for me, snowflakes, when I'm editing these things, it's almost a definition of idiocy, because I'm doing the exact same thing multiple times and expecting different results, but I'm getting it. And so the snowflakes themselves become a subject in and of themselves, and I cannot take credit for their beauty. I can take credit for the way that I photograph them. And it's different than most other people in that I'm using reflected light. The traditional ways in the past would be to having the light pass through a glass plane that has the snowflake on it towards the camera on the other side, and that gives you an interesting image, but it's relatively flat, and you lose the detail and you lose the nuance. But when I'm dealing with macro photography, it's not just snowflakes. I mean, you've got so many different options to play with, and I want to show you this one here that illustrates some of the creative choices that can come about when you're trying to experiment and trying to do some close-up images and trying to find beauty in that. And so this image is a leaf of some plant of unknown name that I took a liking to, because when I sprayed it with a spray bottle, the water droplets beaded up on it very, very beautifully into nice spherical droplets. And the more spherical a droplet is, the better it will act like a lens. And if you put something in behind it, it will refract an image of that something through the water droplet. And so, with some careful composition and some creative ideas, you can then say, take a leaf and a flower from a bouquet of flowers that I had bought my fiance, and she's very understanding when I repurpose them.
It's a gift that keeps on giving.
Exactly. Just a few simple ingredients that were just sitting on my kitchen counter become this image that you see here if you put them together in the right way. And here's another one that took a little bit more of a creative pre-visualization to create what you're seeing. This is a blade of grass that is emerging from the surface of water in a tiny little arc that's been sprayed with water to get the droplets there that are reflecting in the surface of the water and refracting an image of a flower in the droplets, and the actual flower is the out-of-focus background.
That is so insanely good.
I know.
It's fun to do this, and so there's a lot of technical challenges that come about, and there's a trial and error process when I'm working on this. Here's the making of shot here. This is taking a step
just talk
back.
about it like nerding out. That's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I'm a photographer and I'm kind of a science geek at the same time. I like the way these things come together. And you can see that this was just a glass bowl. And it was funny because I knew I needed a bowl because I needed to submerge this particular tool. It's called a third hand that has these little positionable alligator clips. I didn't have the bowl. I went to a local thrift store and I bought it for $6. Okay, so I've got that ingredient.
A bowl and a roach clip.
Yes, exactly. And so it's clipped in place, and then the flower is held in place by another clip, and everything is just positioned so. And there was so much trial and error to get this to work because the water level had to be at the perfect height.
Yeah.
And if I add the flower, so if the flower's in place and I spray the blade of grass, then the flower gets covered in droplets, and I don't want that to happen. So I have to add the flower in after the droplets are there. But if I add the flower in, I displace the water because the flower is half submerged. And if I displace the water, then it will rise and eat up some of those droplets that are just about hitting the surface of the water.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm making all these mistakes, and I'm figuring out, okay, I've got to spray it with water, I've got to add the flower in, and then I have to slowly pour water into the bowl to raise the level of the water up until exactly the right point to make the shot. And so this took about 4 hours or so of experimentation and just some fun. And then, of course, the editing process was extensive as well.
So for sure, we know that you're a patient man.
No, but the funny thing is, I'm not really. When it comes down to
when
it,
your
though,
brain switches to doing this, you are.
when my brain switches to doing this, I'm not even thinking about the finished result. If I was, I wouldn't be very patient. I'm learning every step of the way, and that process keeps me engaged. I'm finding a problem and I'm solving it, and then I'm coming across another one, and then I'm solving that. And for me, that's as fun as getting the final result.
Oh,
so
that's awesome. I love
that sort of negates the patience.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So do you look up all these scientific, like refraction? I don't know all these technical terms, but did you study this before you started photography, or while you were studying?
I'm formally trained in advertising, and so photography skill is all entirely self-taught. And I've never, I failed calculus and physics in high school, so it's all just based on when I want to learn something because I'm passionate about it. It's very easy to learn.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And I want to share one special image because it is the Drink and Click show here. This particular image is beer.
Nice.
Yes. Look how beautiful it is.
Look at how beautiful beer can be. These are little bubbles in the surface of beer, and so that was kind of a fun little experiment.
What's up with that one little guy over in the corner? Did he start feeling sick and need to go to the bathroom? He's like,
I guess so. Yeah.
I'll be back.
Yeah. So
or he's
this
the one
was.
that broke the seal.
I guess so. He's the outlier.
That's either that or Lotus going to the bathroom or getting another.
That's the Lotus bubble for sure.
Yeah.
We can put a selfie. It's really pretty. You should do a whole series of macro alcohol.
I'm sure it would be very interesting, actually.
Like a porter beer too, like the different colors.
Get in close, the unfiltered stuff. What does that look like? And I could make that a whole series if people had the interest in that. So if you're interested, let me know, and that might entice me to go and do it. And before I end off, I know I've taken up a fair amount of airtime here, but I want to.
Oh no, you still have time.
Oh, okay, good. I want to cover something else that I'm about to get re-involved in this year because the trees are now back on the leaves, and that becomes the perfect time of the year for infrared photography, at least in a landscape sense. And with macro photography being very technical, my kind of work in all areas of photography has that technical essence to it. And infrared photography is a little bit difficult, and it requires kind of pre-visualizing something that you can't normally see with your own eyes because infrared light reflects off of things completely differently than visible light does. And so here we have an image of the Gibraltar Point Lighthouse on Toronto Island, and that's me. So that's my selfie.
Yay!
And that's me looking up at the lighthouse in infrared. And a few things you'll notice here is the trees are glowing white, and the sky is actually quite dark, even though it's looking directly into the sun. And those are one of the characteristic behaviors of infrared photography. And they can transform a regular scene into a magical one. And here's an example of that. Here is a boring tree. I'm sure we can all agree that this is a very boring tree.
It has a little character.
It has a bit of character, but it's still not a great picture. But from almost exactly the same angle, in infrared, it turns into something that's quite magical. And so that's some of the fun that you can have in infrared.
Oh,
and so because the light reflects a lot off of foliage, actually anything that produces photosynthesis, so even if the leaves are like a dark purple, they'll still glow bright white. It has no bearing on what the colors are in the visible spectrum. Photosynthesis
I didn't know that. I thought it was just green.
No. And it's interesting, too, because water and sky, the water absorbs infrared light, and the sky doesn't interact with it. So you'll have very interesting scenes, like this one here, where you'll have darker water and darker sky, and rocks and things like that also absorb a lot of infrared. If you put your hand on a rock on a bright, sunny day, it's quite warm because it absorbs a lot of that. So rocks get quite dark as well. Everything behaves differently in that color spectrum, and it's so fun to explore it. And I just started getting into it and finding interest in that.
How do you achieve this? Tell me. I don't know how to do this.
So there's two ways to do it. With your existing camera, as it is, you can buy an infrared filter, and that will allow only infrared light to pass through. The problem is digital cameras are designed such that they do not let infrared light hit the sensor. They have what's called a low pass, actually it's a low pass and a high pass filter in front of the sensor that blocks light that the sensor would be sensitive to, but our eyes are not sensitive to. So ultraviolet and infrared get kicked out so that the camera sees something that we see. But it's not perfect. It's about 98% effective. Different cameras vary. And so you can let maybe 2% of the light coming through, which means you've got long exposures, and you've got a filter that you can't see through, and focusing becomes a problem, and white balance becomes an issue. You can do this without a modified camera with maybe 30-second exposures, and get decent results. And I tried that. That's how I originally started experimenting with that.
So Don, are you adding an infrared filter in like a 10-stop neutral density?
So when I come across this kind of stuff, you don't add any neutral density filter to that. The infrared filter will effectively function far greater than a 10-stop ND filter if you're using an unmodified camera. And if you don't want to bite the bullet and convert a camera for this purpose, then that's probably the way a lot of people begin experimenting. And they buy a filter, stick it on the lens, and then scratch their head a lot because there's so many challenges. You can't see it, you can't focus. Even if you could focus, say if you take a picture, or if you focus the camera before putting the filter on and then take the picture, it'll be out of focus because infrared light focuses at a different point than visible light does.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh my God.
So some lenses will actually have a little adjuster on it. I know the Canon 24-105 will have infrared focus markers on it, but most lenses don't. So it becomes a huge challenge. The best way to do it is with live view, but you have so little light coming through on an unmodified camera. I shoot primarily with a Canon 1DX. And if I put a filter on that and I try to use live view with an infrared filter, I can't barely see anything. I can maybe get the outline of the brightest object and maybe use that for focusing, but it's hit or miss sometimes. So it's tricky. And then the editing process is equally difficult because the ones that I were showing, they are based on they're false color, because keep in mind, if I show one more here, the colors in this image don't actually exist because they're beyond our visible spectrum, right? So they're false. And you have to take whatever colors exist in the image and map them to have some similarity or familiarity with what you see as the world. And I try to go for a blue sky, and sometimes I add a bit of color to the foreground. In this case, it has a bit of a magenta hint to it, but those colors don't exist. So you get to be creative in that sense, and that it involves channel swapping in Photoshop and some complicated editing. Again, you can make it black and white, and it works great in black and white. Don't get me wrong, but the color is something that it adds to the technical challenge.
And you do this all by eye without any training in color theory or anything like that? Because this is quite amazing.
I have no formal
make it
training.
Not look fake, right?
Yeah, and so I have no formal training in color theory, although full disclosure, X-Rite, who makes a lot of color calibration equipment, they sponsor me. I'm one of their colorati, as they call them, because of my
the color looks fantastic, and I know if you're adding this in, it's so easy to make it look really, really fake, right?
Yeah, and I'm not going to say that I add it all in. There is a certain amount of color that I have to just massage and push around. It's not like I'm just adding it. Some of it is just manipulated where it stands, and the same is like if I show you this one here, the blue in the background would have been a dark brownish color right out of camera. And so I can switch that to blue using some channel swapping and some color cleanup work in order to get the results there. And so you're right that it's tricky, and it takes a bit of experience, and you're not going to get it the first try. But the end results pay for themselves after you've put the blood, sweat, and tears into pulling out your hair, trying to figure out how to do it. Now, I should say that for those that want to do this right, I've modified a camera for that purpose. So you can send a camera away to get that low-pass and high-pass filter removed from the sensor. And I had one replaced that blocks everything but infrared light. So I can use the camera in live view and focus in live view because that's seeing the light right from this, right off the sensor, so I can focus it properly, and I can pre-visualize the shot in that way. And so
that's exciting.
Now it costs a fair bit. I think it costs around $300 or so to get a camera modified, and now that camera will only be able to do this. So I modified a 5D Mark II for this purpose. Any Rebel or Nikon camera that you've got that maybe you've upgraded and you've got something collecting dust, that you can do this. You can send it away and get it modified. Usually the smaller sensor cameras are a bit cheaper, but keep in mind if it doesn't have live view, you'll still have the challenge of focus. So you'd want to have that at your disposal.
Nice.
Wow.
Nice. And so we do have a question, right, Lotus?
Yeah, we have a viewer question. Roberto Inetti asked, can you use extension tubes with a macro lens?
Oh, of course you can. In fact, I use that all the time. With my 1 to 5 times macro lens, which gets 5 times closer than the average macro lens does. If I put a set of extension tubes on that, it kicks me up to 6 to 1. And so on an average macro lens, you might be able to, between adding 50 to 100% onto your magnification factor by adding a set of, I think Kenko is a good name of extension tubes that have all the electrical contacts that allow the lens and control the aperture and all that kind of stuff just fine. And so I use those on regular lenses and my macro lenses, and they'll work in either scenario.
Are they really expensive, or are they fairly cheap to purchase?
About $200. So I mean, they're not
too bad.
super cheap, but I mean, they're cheaper than a dedicated macro lens if you don't already have one.
Yeah.
And if you've already got a dedicated macro lens, you probably have the itch to get even closer, and that's their solution.
How do you know if you have a dedicated macro lens?
If you don't know, then you don't have one.
Lens.
Yeah.
I just have to.
Well, some lenses will actually say macro on the focusing barrel, or you might have a zoom lens that might get close to macro, but it's not a true macro.
Okay.
That's say 1-to-1 on them, right?
Yeah, well, it'll have 1-to-1 life size, and for people that don't know macro photography, that's I'm speaking Chinese. So what that means is, if I'm photographing something, it's appearing on the sensor the same size as it is in reality. So if I were to take a picture of a quarter, for example, and I've got a full-frame camera, the film is a better analogy for this. If I were to shoot that picture on film, and take that frame of film and then hold it up to the quarter and overlay the two together, the quarter will fit exactly the same size as the size of the quarter on the negative. It's hitting the sensor as the exact same size as the object is in reality. And so that's what the term 1-to-1 life size means. And that's a gauge for how close you can get when you're magnifying. And so traditional macro lenses will get up to that level. And then you can use extension tubes and close-up filters or all sorts of weird things. You can take a lens and flip it around backwards in front of a macro lens and get some insane magnifications, getting to the cellular level of plants and stuff when you get right into it. And it's funny because it's really easy to calculate this. If you're curious how close you can get as a factor of magnification, just set your camera to the closest focusing point that it can get, and then move the camera forward and backward until you have a ruler in focus. And then count the millimeter markings on the ruler, if you've got millimeter markings. Because sensors are usually measured in millimeters. A crop sensor camera might be 24 millimeters, a full-frame one might be 36. And you've got the variables there to do a bit of algebra and figure out exactly what your magnification factor is.
Nice, nice. So I guess I give it a shot. Here in Austin, we don't get a bunch of snow, but
oh, come on! You got molten snowflakes there. You got water droplets to play with.
Well, I might give it a.
We have beer.
Hey, we got snow like 2 snow days this year.
Oh, we got plenty of beer. We got plenty of beer.
There you go.
Well done.
Let's do some margaritas.
I know.
But you'd be surprised how interesting salt and sugar crystals are when you zoom in closely to them. They're pretty fascinating.
There you go, salt the rim.
I might give it a shot. I shot, if you know what I mean. Don, thank you so much, man. We learned so much, and it's so fascinating to see your images and
that was awesome
that you can come up with. It's just amazing. It's like we might have to have a second show with you. And
I got more fun stuff. I'm experimenting with the color spectrum of different light sources right now, and that's kind of fun and interesting to figure out what the quality of light actually is beyond what you see with your own eyes. So you're welcome to have me back.
Yeah, that's a pretty awesome, and I think we will.
Sweet, thanks, man.
You're welcome. And if anybody's curious to see my work online, you can check it out at doncom.ca. And there's all my snowflake stuff. You can get a link to the book there, too, if you want.
Doncom. That was a really good way to avoid having to...
Spell my last name? Yeah.
Good one. All right. Excellent. Well, we're also going to see some work from our panelists. And we're going to start off with Maki.
All right, so let's see if I'm going to do this right. Screen share. And...
You can do it.
I know, I'm like technically challenged.
You got it.
Okay. So let's see. The first thing, my true passion is food photography. I mean, everybody likes to eat, but I really love to eat. So one of the things I started kind of photographing food because I hate cooking, and I liked photography better, but I hate cooking. So to try to make that a little less painful, I started photographing what I was making, and so that was where I got sort of my practice. And then I don't really have a lot of lights or anything, so most of it, actually 99.9% of it, is natural light. And I just kind of rearrange things and try to figure out what I like to do. So that's this. This was actually from a assignment. Jake Johnson is running, quote unquote, a Jake's assignment community. It's private. It's only about 30 people. And this actually started last year. It was more open to the public. Everybody got a personalized, tailored assignment. It was really great. It was less it wasn't about technicalities. It was more about exploring your stories, exploring, in depth your emotions, et cetera, and illustrating it in an image. So one of the assignments was for me, pick a magazine that you admire and shoot something in that style. And of course, I went to Bon Appetit magazine, and
that's really cool.
so this was one of the assignments that I did. The other one is this. It's a current assignment. It's called, the assignment is create a storytelling image. That's it. No words, nothing. And I had always been wanting to play with double exposure. I'm a total novice with Photoshop. So, and then lo and behold, Lotus and everybody else's self-portrait community, the theme was double exposure. So
I still have to
perfect.
make mine.
So I kind of killed two birds with one stone here. With that, I won't get into what the actual story entails, and I haven't told any of my community members in that. But I know he is going to open it up again next year with a different theme. So look for his Jake Johnson's posts, and it'll be a private community, so you don't feel vulnerable to trolls or anything like that.
That's cool.
The other one, so I really like I love Don's work. I love macro photography. So I was really excited when Lotus invited me to this show. And I am a total novice with this, but just completely experimenting. And I definitely find all the challenges that he was saying about, depth of field issues, motion blur. I hate tripods, so I do this handheld, and I don't really have a steady hand, so I'm taking a bunch of pictures. And this is actually a leaf from a rose bush in my yard, and it was raining, and I saw these beatings that he was talking about. So clearly I don't have, I wish I could get everything in focus, and I don't know how to do focus stacking, so that'll be another experiment I like to do.
That's beautiful results. And I want to say your first picture made me hungry, and the second one made me feel stressed, which is the emotion that the image is trying to convey. So great on you there. And it's a great macro photo, so it's wonderful stuff.
Thank you. So I've been kind of experimenting with everything. It keeps me, this is sort of my therapy, I would say. Photography, I do it, I don't do it professionally. I'm an amateur, but like you said, I like experimenting and getting inspired by other people and seeing, oh, maybe I could try this, and maybe I could try that. So
it's like you're in college again.
It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
like experimenting.
Except you're your own teacher.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oops. Let me see. I guess I should stop the screen share. How do I do that?
There you go.
There you go.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Mackie.
Thank
Those
you.
are really cool.
All right,
All right.
Ryan, you're up next.
All right, let's see if I can get it there.
But didn't you say you were going to share your Instagram with us?
Yeah, well, I couldn't really figure out how to
I'm
do
yanking
it.
your chain. Don't you dare do that.
Well, I went to Instagram.com.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, it's so easy. No, I'm joking. So yeah, I guess we were talking about, similar to Mackie, when I shoot to, it's almost like therapeutic. It allows me to relax, do whatever. And I've been shooting for about 20 years now, doing a lot of wildlife, macros of bugs, that kind of stuff. So the macro thing really resonates with me. But I found myself getting kind of in the same groove and taking the same shot. So I gave myself a challenge 2 years ago to try to do something different. And two of the genres that I like to look at but don't really like to shoot, or at the time didn't like to shoot, were architectural details, architecture, that kind of stuff, and generally people pictures. I didn't take a lot of pictures of people aside from my family. And that was a while ago. So I thought I'd try both, and I tried architecture and really just despised it. It's way too technical for me, especially in Vancouver. There's a lot of different things going on. You have a really nice building, but then the surrounding is quite different. It's almost like a big mishmash of styles. So it's hard to actually take something unless it's standing on its own. But I did find that, unbeknownst to me, taking pictures of people is actually quite fun. You give up a little bit of freedom because you're working with someone and you really have to communicate to them what you want to get out of it, as opposed to, like Lotus with the selfie, I guess you can direct yourself, and after a while you can sort of, kind of get that, but sometimes it's a little bit more difficult for me.
Yeah, for me, the photographer and the model both know exactly what they're going for.
Yeah, you would
It's the
hope
same
so.
thing.
Yeah. But for me, selfies I find harder to do, so I tried that. I did try selfies. I didn't really like it. I'm a bit too shy for that.
You've done some good ones.
I'm slowly getting there, but and again, I'll keep trying. But I found that taking pictures of people other people other than me, is a little bit more rewarding, I guess, than landscapes. And I've tried to incorporate landscapes with people photos and kind of do that sort of thing. So the shot I'm displaying now was a model from a local agency, and I've been blessed to be able to work with local agencies because I've got an almost unlimited supply of talent, which is fantastic. And we were basically just walking around under a bridge, and there's a big green spot in the middle there that's kind of a leaf. And I took the shot, kind of just a snapshot. She was looking at some flowers. I told her just to play around kind of thing. I'll just take pictures, whatever. And I got the shot published on what's called Photo Vogue. It's Vogue Italia's kind of take on Flickr. It's not Vogue magazine or anything like that, but it was a goal that I had last year to get something up there. They do have a real photo editor, and they're similar to the Delete Me community in that you'll upload a shot, and if they don't like it, they literally just delete it. So it's off the site kind of thing.
This is gorgeous.
And you get one shot a day, and it's really like it's an ego crusher. And I tried for months, and one day I was just fed up, and I said, look, I'll just throw this one up there because I like it. It's not technically superb or anything like that, but I like the shot, so I threw it up, and lo and
It's
behold,
emotive as hell.
I love it. Yeah.
And
then
that
Ryan,
leaf that you have out of focus in the foreground so makes it.
Yeah, it kind of
makes it more like mysterious or magical, or it's amazing.
Wonderful.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I can tell that it's funny because you can pre-visualize that as a concept. Well, maybe I want to.
It's never the same, right? I totally identify with what you're saying.
Exactly, and then the camera's going to give you something entirely different. But that's the beauty of doing it in camera, and I can actually tell by the bokeh in the background that it is something that's out of focus in the foreground that was done, in camera and not done after the fact. So kudos to you for experimenting in the field and trying to come up with something creative.
You got it, and like you said, this is a cheapo lens. This is a 50-1.8, I think. So it's something you can pick up for extremely cheap on the Canon side, the Nikon side just as much. It's just a standard lens.
It's a great little lens.
Mm-hmm.
So the next shot I got here is a little bit more technically complicated. So this is a ring light because I bought one light. I like ring lights, but I didn't know much about light at the time. So I bought one light, and I bought I think a $15 light stand kind of thing. It's rickety as all get up, and I wouldn't recommend doing it. But I've got this up about maybe 8 feet in the air, pointing down at this guy, and he's a professional dancer from. I'm trying to remember the name of the city. It's not Kona, but it's Hilo on the big island in Hawaii. And this guy's name is Jesse, and he and I get along like a house on fire. But he's amazing in terms of emotion and also in terms of action. So this is him jumping. I mean, he just does this stuff. It's fantastic. You just tell Jesse to go, and he does it. So I had him jump a few times. I took some shots, and
How many takes?
This one I think was the second take, and it's
Oh wow!
When you've got talent like this, the onus is on you to capture the shot, and not miss it, kind of thing. And I was lucky that I got it. I took some more just in case, because I'm a film guy, so I don't look at the viewfinder very often. I find myself often messing stuff up because I think that I'm smarter than the camera, and I'll do clever things and then go back and ISO 3200 was totally the right setting for this shot. Yeah, this is maybe the third, but really, really early on. And I took about 19 takes of this, but it was one of the first few. And I was just lucky. I had it set up to 1/1, like as strong as I could possibly make it. It's quite close to him. It's just out of scene here. And yeah, I got lucky. The next one, I guess, is more purposeful. So we went into this trying to take a shot that made people uncomfortable. And specifically, just showing the bones in her back, that kind of thing. So showing her vulnerable and at the same time strong, which is kind of hard for me to do. And yeah, this is a local model who's fantastic. And I sort of just set up the shoot, showed her the black and white. Black and white's generally not something you go in sort of a fashion setting, but I showed her what I wanted to do. I'm showing these in progression as I go. I want to show how I've matured or learned from my mistakes. But this is very backlit, so this is breaking a lot of rules. It's probably shot at 1600 ISO, so there's a lot of noise, or what people might call grain. But this is sort of the mood I want to get.
Nothing wrong with noise.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Nice. I don't want to hear your noise.
I like it.
But yeah, and then just exposing for her face and focusing on her eye, which is pretty handy. Not to waste too much time here, but a lot of the stuff that I do, I can't really show until about a month or two after. Generally, I try to shoot with the goal to be published, and typically not self-publish. I know it's kind of lame and maybe egotistical, but to have it go through a reviewer's eye and actually get it into indie magazines, that kind of stuff. Just because I might overinflate my ego, that kind of stuff, and think, oh yeah, this shot's the best, and the last shot I took is always the best shot, and doing it this way allows me to sort of put it through a filter.
Hey, we all do, right? We're photographers. You're like, oh, this is the best shot, and then nobody likes it.
And I learned this through, again, Delete Me, as I mentioned before, and there's another community called the Lightbox on Google+, which is fantastic. It is rapid fire. They'll tell you, I like it, I don't like it, delete, save, that kind of stuff. It's really quick, but you get to know what resounds with people, and it's okay to break rules, but sometimes you get to know which ones to break and which ones not to break and when. And so in the next shot, this is something that, this is sort of, I guess you call it a tear sheet from a magazine. So it's something that's yet to be published, but they released a teaser. So I shot these, I think, 3 weeks ago. And this is more in the evolution. This is a full team. So the last shot had about 3 people in the team. The first couple were literally one-on-one kind of shots. But I think in terms of this shoot, we probably had about 14 people involved. So there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. So I had an assistant that I could kind of bark orders at or nicely ask to move a light here or there. I had a stylist doing the wardrobe. I had someone doing the hair. The girl on the left, her hair was about 46 inches long. It took about 2 hours and 30 minutes to actually tease out to get to that size. So it was literally about halfway down her body or more.
Wow.
So quite a bit of work. And then, again, in this shot, I think we had her pick up the threads and drop. And in terms of takes, it might have been the 4th or 5th take. And then again, I think I probably took about 30 of them because I like to play it on the safe side. Yeah. I overshoot now that I don't shoot film, so I don't shoot film as often, so I get the ability to overshoot, which is really handy for me. Especially, there's a bit of blur in the fabric, but not too much. If you go in and look, like when it prints, you'll actually be able to see it, but it's about half an inch kind of thing. So there is some motion in there, but nothing too crazy that makes it blurry. And then, in terms of a light setup, this is quite complicated. There's 4 V-flats. She's basically in a big room in terms of like a box, I guess I set up with the white sides on it, and a 30-inch reflector on one side and 60-inch on the left. We set up this shot, and the same box, basically, essentially the same lighting setup was used for the one on the right. Now, again, we had someone doing jewelry, someone doing her makeup, someone doing her hair. If you zoom right in, they've done a lot of I guess you can't really see it here, but they've done a lot of accents on her eyebrows, which is it's more of an avant-garde kind of thing here.
Yeah.
Again, this is web quality, so you can barely see it, but it's kind of making really, really thick eyebrows there.
Kind of like my eyebrows.
Yeah, right? It's kind of like mine. That's kind of what I was thinking. Yeah, the bushy eyebrows thing is in.
I don't know.
But yeah, so this is a lot of the stuff I'm doing now is a team effort. So it involves pre-visualizing, coming up with a concept, really having intent, and making sure that what we intend to do comes out in the final shots.
Well, at least you have a crew, because it's usually me carrying everything and just one model. And
yeah, I tend to do my own grip, so I can empathize with that.
Yeah.
Build some muscle, right? Get in shape.
Yep. Oh yeah.
But yeah, it is really handy. It's the voice-activated light stand. You can't. There's not enough credit that you can give to that. Just being able to tell somebody, can you scooch it to the right? Like, what's a scooch? But they know.
Well, thank you so much, Ryan, to sharing your images with us. They're beautiful. And Lotus, are we gonna announce the top 3?
Are we gonna announce the winners? Is that what you asked me?
Yes.
Yes. Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, let me screen share. Hold on.
And are we going with the 3rd place, right, first?
Yeah, we'll start with 3rd and we'll move to 2nd and 1st. And so our topic for last month's challenge was black and white portraits.
Yep.
So, bear with me here a second.
Drum roll.
3rd place. Can you see it?
Yep, and we got 3rd place, and 3rd place is from Vancouver, Brina Bunt. Hopefully I said it correctly.
I think so.
Yeah, and she won a Pan Am passport cover.
That's awesome. Congrats, Brina.
Yeah, and I will be contacting her tomorrow to send that over.
Okay.
Ooh, that's cool. Too.
And then we go in 2nd place, and this is from Berlin, and it's Mike Schultz. Hopefully I said it correctly. From Berlin, and he won a VBUG photo contest 1-year subscription.
Yay.
And I will contact them tomorrow.
Okay, and drum roll.
Oh, that's awesome.
and we got 1st place is from Richard Beckwith from Philadelphia, Philly. And he won a Think Tank Retrospective 40 camera bag.
Excellent.
It's a $220 camera bag.
Wow,
Yeah.
awesome.
Good stuff.
That's awesome, yeah.
So I hope you enjoyed, and congratulations to all 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place for the awesome pictures. We got so many hard pictures to choose
Yeah, those
from.
are awesome.
A lot of really great submissions for the black and
I
white
know.
theme.
I know. We're going to have to do more portraiture.
Definitely. I had a really fun time with that one.
Yes.
Yeah, it was very nice. It was very nice. So,
And our current theme.
Yeah, our current theme. Oh my goodness.
Long exposure.
There you go.
That's
Long
awesome.
exposure.
So that's this month's challenge. If anybody wants to go to a photo walk, drink and click photo walk, and shoot long exposure, they can enter the contest and possibly win prizes from our sponsors for this month, which are Smug Mug, Lumoid, and Trey Ratcliffe's Stuck in Customs.
Who's Trey Ratcliffe?
Yeah,
Guy who likes to wear-
I hear the same all the time. I don't know.
The guy who like hot pants.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you don't have a drink and click in your city, we have 33 cities, and we are soon launching another 3rd city in Germany, and we might be launching another one in Canada within the next 2 weeks. So if you don't have one in your city and you're active on Google+, because that's where we run our chapter pages, and you want to run a chapter in your city, just get in contact with us, and we can get one rolling. So just send us an email
at gmail.com.
Exactly. Just send us an email there, and we get in contact with you, and then we get something going.
Oh, and I'm excited. We already have our next month's guest lined up. We are going to be talking to Vivian Goudssois next month on the show. So on June 11th is our next show, and we'll have Vivian Goudssois.
Awesome. Excited to see some of the Paris and New York pictures.
Yeah, she's had a lot of really awesome stuff going on lately, so it'll be cool to touch base with her and see her work.
Yeah, that'll be awesome. Well, thank you again to all the panelists and our guests, Dawn, Mackie, and Ryan.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks, guys.
And
thanks, guys. It's been awesome hanging.
And thank you so much, Lotus, for helping me putting this stuff together. And
always a pleasure.
Always being there. And thank you for everybody for watching. And you stay in touch for next month.
Sounds great.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Good night, everybody.